So last week we focused more on the nature side of the nature-nurture debate. Behaviorism, which we'll look at this week, focuses very much on the other extreme of the nurture debate. And behaviorism itself was an immediate backlash to psychoanalysis and the Freudian perspective. And they said, hey, we want to look at only what we can research, test, experiment on, and observe. If we can't observe it, such things as like the id, you can't observe that, right? You can observe the behaviors of someone, that we could theoretically apply to the id, but behaviorists would say, well, we don't know if it's coming from the id or maybe it's coming from something else. And we should only be able to apply what we're experimenting on to what we can observe. So there's three big areas that we're going to look at here. The first one is just observation. What we observe, we pick up. And this is a guy named Albert Bandura. He did an experiment called the Bobo Doll experiment. That's this thing right here is a Bobo Doll. Basically, you hit it, it bounces back up. You hit it, it bounces back up. It was weighted on the bottom here to allow it to happen. And what he did with these kids is he would put them in a room with a bunch of toys, including a Bobo Doll, and see what happens. And sometimes he would just put them in there and see what happens, let them explore, and he'd videotape it. Sometimes he would show them a video of an adult beating up the Bobo Doll first, and sometimes he would frustrate them and then also put them in there, or frustrate them and put them in there after watching this video of the adult. And what he found is that kids who observed adults beating up the Bobo Doll were more likely to beat up the Bobo Doll instead of playing with other toys. Whether they were frustrated, that increased it even more. But even when they weren't frustrated, they would go, what they'd observed is what they would do. And they would become even novel with it. They would use different ways of yelling at it and find other toys to hit with it, and even found a toy gun at one point in the video and pretended to shoot it. It was true both with boys, as we see here, but also with girls as well. So the point being that what we observe from those in our lives that we are meant to look up to, the adults, our peers, those types of individuals, we will model those personality traits as well. Now, we also see conditioning happening, and conditioning is basically that we get trained to think about a different way. First form of conditioning that comes up is Pavlov's classical conditioning. And the idea being that, normally you give a dog food, it's going to salivate. If you do a whistle, nothing's going to happen. But if I whistle, then give it food, it'll salivate because of the food, right? Eventually, the whistle alone will cause the dog to salivate. So think about, if you're driving down the street and suddenly in your rearview mirror, you see red and blue lights flashing. What happens to your body? It reacts, right? Your heart rate goes up. You start breathing heavily. You start to have this stress response. And it's a natural response because you've been conditioned to know that if you see red and blue lights behind you, it means you're probably getting pulled over. There's a problem here. Okay? So we've all been conditioned to react a certain way. Another example is if someone sneezes, you're probably going to say bless you. Or if someone holds the door for you, you might say thank you. These are all conditioned responses, right? It's not, there's no biological reason for you to do these things, but we've been trained that these are the proper things and ways to act. Off of classical conditioning, B.F. Skinner developed operant conditioning. He said it's a little more complicated than just pairing two things. He said that it's a pairing and the consequences afterwards influence things. So we can have positive or negative punishment or reinforcement. Positive punishment, we add something in to decrease the behavior. Positive reinforcement, we add something in to increase the behavior. Negative punishment, we take something away to decrease the behavior. Negative reinforcement, we take something away to increase behavior. So, I have children at home. So if I want to use positive reinforcement, which is actually the most effective tool to use to shape behavior, I might say, hey, you know what? I'm really proud of you for getting your homework done on time. Why don't you have some extra TV time? Add something in that they want to do so the next time they're more likely to get their homework done quickly instead of fighting me about it. Positive punishment might be, so maybe they didn't get their homework done, they took a long time, I add something in and I say, you know what, you're going to have to do extra work today, extra chores or extra homework because you didn't get done what you needed to do. So I'm adding things in. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, is the negative side of that. So we're adding negative and positive. We tend to think of good and bad, but we want to think about them in kind of math terms. So negative punishment, maybe in the same example, they didn't get their homework done on time, so I take away that TV time. I say, sorry, no TV tonight because you didn't get your homework done in the time that we allotted. Negative reinforcement, I'm taking something away that will increase behavior. So maybe it's dinner time and I want to eat some vegetables. So I say, okay, there's 5 pieces of broccoli on your plate. If you eat 3 of them, you don't have to eat the other 2. I'm taking away those 2 to reinforce the eating at least some of the broccoli. So how does this impact personality? Well, imagine you're in a room and you tell a joke and everyone laughs. How does that make you feel? Probably good, right? So that reinforces this behavior of, oh, it's nice to tell jokes. People laugh. It makes me feel good. That's positive reinforcement. You're getting reinforced, becoming maybe more extroverted that way. Or maybe you had a bad experience. You told a joke, no one laughed, they made fun of you. Now you're less likely to do that in the future. That was a form of, positive punishment there. The laughter that they gave you to make fun of you, instead of laughing at your joke, acted as a positive punishment here, where something was being added in to decrease your behavior. So our personality, according to Skinner, is shaped by operant conditioning. So if you have any questions about observational learning, behaviorism, and how that impacts personality, just let me know.